the tension is coming from. People need to understand the position of the farmers and the general public of Uganda. And people also need to understand the position of the president, that is H.E Gen.Museveni, and then the position of the NRM MPs in parliament, contrary to the position of majority of opposition MPs in parliament, because it is very clear that majority of the people of the population in the country do not want this coffee amendment bill to be passed. And then one can notice that the president wants this bill to be passed against all odds. And then we find that the opposition members led by the leader of opposition, that is Right Honorable Joel Senyonyi, also do not want this bill to be passed against all odds. And then we have the NRM MPs who seem to just be following orders. One can't actually know what their stand is, because when it is time for voting, the best they can do is to say yes, but you can't hear them really discuss the issue of coffee. They don't really seem to be knowing what is happening, but what is happening is the Coffee Amendment Bill 2024. Maybe the crucial thing there is, number one, this bill looks forward to dissolving UCDA and then transferring all functions of UCDA under the Ministry of Agriculture. Then other interesting thing is this. That wouldn't be a problem, because the government right now is looking at rationalization, that institutions or agencies that are seeming to be doing similar activities, government is removing them and bringing all their functions and activities under their mother ministry. That is what is happening currently. But when it comes to the issue of coffee, that is touching the local person, touching the general public, touching the general population of Uganda at heart. Because let's go straight to the point. I need us to know certain facts about coffee. First of all, coffee was introduced by the colonialists, that is 1900, the period of 1900. That's when coffee was introduced. Then coffee took up and became one of the major cash crops. Even before independence, that is up to 1962. We find that up to that time, coffee was a major cash crop, to the extent that these colonialists had to put up specialized agencies or institutions for coffee, specifically for coffee. And then we find that even after independence from 1962 to the rule of Amin, that is 1971, we find that coffee was still shooting up as a major cash crop. Actually, coffee reached a point where it was the major good exported, because coffee, money that the country used to get from exports alone, coffee used to account for 50 to 60%. That is more than 50% of all money that the country could get from export. So coffee has been unique in that, and it has been way up among things that are exported from the country. We find that even during Amin's time, coffee excelled, though data tells us that economy generally collapsed during Amin's time. And then the major issue is that Amin's economic policy was a bad one. His economic policy majorly was nationalization, that you get businesses even of foreigners and put it in the hands of the Ugandans. I mean, just away the Indians, and even their coffee gardens and what industries, or those small institutions that used to handle coffee were given to Ugandans. So that is a fact that many people view as something that brought down the coffee industry. But then still we see that even during Amin's time, coffee was a major cash crop. after Amin, then we can come to the 1980s now, up to the present. From the 1980s up to 1991, we still had the coffee marketing board, which has actually existed way back even before Amin's rule, until 1991, when the current government privatized the coffee marketing board, the Uganda Coffee Marketing Board. It was privatized, and then, of course, we don't know where the equipment went and all that, because we see that the value at which it was sold was different from the value of the assets of the Uganda marketing, I mean the Uganda Coffee Marketing Board, because we see that its actual value that was supposed to be sold to was, is it about 30 billion plus, but then we understand it was sold in less than 10 billion. So even the process of its privatization and selling wasn't clear. So this current government put up UCDA 1991 to replace Uganda Coffee Marketing Board. But when you look at their objectives, they are actually the same, because Uganda Coffee Marketing Board was to regulate prices, quality control. Like, it is the same with the UCDA. Everything was the same. Only that maybe these ones wanted to put in something unique, which I really don't know. But that is the history of how these things have been, coffee, up to the present. Now, from 1991, we had UCDA. Until of recent, government wants to remove UCDA and finally bring coffee under the Ministry of Agriculture. But there's a lot of questions, and there's a lot of logical reasoning, because number one, number one facts about coffee is, we should note that worldwide, coffee is the world's second most traded commodity in the world market after oil. Actually, oil is the only commodity that is most traded than coffee, because when you get all commodities, coffee is the second most traded commodity worldwide after oil. So it is going to be very rare for you to go to a country where coffee is grown and they don't have a specialized agency or authority for coffee. It is not common, because coffee is that special that among your export as a country, as long as you're dealing in coffee might account for half. It might account for up to half of whatever you're exporting. That is coffee. So coffee is a major cash crop. You cannot compare it with the rest of the cash crops. I saw the president trying to say, should we get also an authority for millet, for cassava, for... You cannot, because those cash crops can't be compared to coffee worldwide. Coffee alone can actually handle an economy as a cash crop when you get to agricultural products. So coffee is, you can't put it with millet and all the rest. Of course, there are so many regions that don't grow coffee, but you realize that right now all regions of Uganda are growing coffee. So number one fact about coffee, coffee is the world's second most traded commodity after oil. That fact can't make you put coffee together with other cash crops. You can't put it under a non-specialized ministry. Number two fact about coffee, let me narrow it to Uganda, is that approximately 1.7 million households in Uganda depend on coffee. That is a report by UCDA, that approximately 1.7 or 1.8 million households in Uganda depend on coffee. That's not a small number. The next one is around 30% of agricultural households in Uganda grow coffee. That's still a report by UCDA. That when you get households that are doing agriculture in the whole country, 30% of them grow coffee. That's still not a small number or a small statistics to play around with. Then we see that coffee sector employs around 2.5 people in Uganda, directly and indirectly. That is still a report also by UCDA. So coffee is a source of employment, and we are saying 2.5 million of Ugandans are employed in the coffee industry directly and indirectly. That's still not a small number. 2.5 million. When you get it to election or into politics, you'll find that 2.5 million people can actually determine uh, let me not go there, but 2.5 million is not a small number. We have seen people standing for presidency in this country and they fail to even make that number. So this is not a small number. Let's go to the next fact. Coffee is a significant source of income to approximately 5 million Ugandans. That's a report by UCDM. You note that around that, we are saying 1.7 million households in Uganda depend on coffee. We are saying around 30% of agricultural households in Uganda grow coffee. We are saying coffee sector employs around 2.5 million people in Uganda, directly and indirectly. We are saying coffee is a significant source of income to approximately 5 million Ugandans. We are saying coffee is Uganda is Africa's second largest coffee producer and exporter after Ethiopia. In Africa, Uganda is the second largest coffee producer and exporter. Then Uganda is the world's second largest producer of Robusta coffee. That's after Vietnam. That is a report by ICO, a body that Uganda recently exited. Then Uganda is East Africa's second largest producer of Arabica coffee. Of course, that's after Ethiopia. That's a report by ICO. Uganda's coffee industry contributes around 20 to 30% of the country's foreign exchange earning. That is a report by World Bank. Of course, it can vary from 15 to 30% depending on the year of the country's foreign exchange earning. Because we are seeing that after independence, that it could even account up to about 50 to 60% of the country's foreign exchange earning. So coffee is that unique. Those are facts about coffee. That is one reason why coffee has to be under a specialized authority. Authority. Or if you're not okay with the name authority, you can put it under. Maybe I don't know, but it has to be something independent and specialized, like the rest of the world that are growing coffee are doing. That is a brief history of coffee. That is really a brief history of coffee, and we are still going on. I need you to know that right now, when you look at statistics, the top 10 coffee growing countries in the world, Uganda is among the top 10 world growing the top 10 coffee growing countries in the world. Uganda is among them. And when you look at the Ferraz report, Ferraz is Farrers. That's from UK. Actually, they have operated for over 200 years, from 1819. That's over 200 years. They have been around. They do craft roasting of coffee. In 2023, they graded Uganda as number 10. Actually, Uganda has always been among top 10 coffee growing countries in the world. Depending on the years, they keep varying in position. But as of 2023, Uganda was ranked number 10, and it was producing 200, that is 209,325 metric tons of coffee. It was around there. This report was issued in 2023, June the 2nd. But then we see that in these top 10 coffee growing countries in the world, Brazil is the leading country. Also, you should note that we are talking about over 70 countries that are growing coffee, and these countries are located within the tropics. Those are countries that grow coffee. So we see that Brazil is number one coffee growing country in the world, and Brazil Brazil is having about 2,680,515 metric tons, and Uganda is in 209,325 metric tons. Those are top 10 coffee growing countries in the world. But when we come to coffee export, because growing it is different from exporting it. When we come to top 10 coffee exporting countries in the world, 2022, of course, I didn't read for you the whole of the top 10 coffee growing countries in the world. Maybe if you need it, we have Brazil number one, Vietnam number two, Colombia number three, Indonesia number four. We have Honduras number five. We have Ethiopia number six in Africa and the world. Ethiopia is number one in the world, and then number six in, Ethiopia is number one in Africa and number six in the world. Then we have Peru in number 7, we have India number 8, we have Guatemala number 9, then we have Uganda number 10. That's a report of 2023 June. So you should know that Ethiopia is having 471,247 metric tons, but Uganda is in 209,325 metric tons. So Brazil is number one worldwide in growing coffee. Now, when you come to top 10 coffee exporting countries in the world, when you look at 2022, Uganda was ranked number 7. But of course, it keeps varying. We have always been in top 10, but it varies. You can be even number 10 or number 11 like that. But then when you come to 2023, Uganda is not part. Because 2020, you'll find that Brazil, which is a world number one world, the largest coffee growing country in the world, it is still the world largest coffee exporting country in the world. Then it comes Vietnam, Colombia, Indonesia, Honduras, India, Uganda, Mexico, Guatemala. This report is of 2022 and the past years. But then with increasing years, we see that countries like Switzerland, Germany, Netherlands, USA, Canada have come up among coffee exporting countries, because as of 2023, the largest coffee exporter in the world was Brazil, followed by Switzerland, followed by Germany, Netherlands, USA number 5, Canada number 6, Poland number 7, Mexico number 8, UK number 9, and then this country, this last one here, is it the letter is Zechia. Uganda is not among top 10, the world top 10 coffee exporting countries in the world. We see these first world countries like Switzerland, Germany, Netherlands, USA coming up among coffee exporting countries, because what do? They do what we call re-exporting, that you import from these developing countries like Uganda, you process it, do value addition, and then export. So they are doing that at a very high quantity, that they even exceed the rest of the coffee growing countries in exporting coffee. So that is that is a statistics you cannot underlook. Now, given that statistics, I need us to note something, that much as Uganda is among the top 10 coffee growing countries in the world, when it comes to coffee exporting countries in the world, Uganda is lagging behind. And uh, the reason is, number one, we don't have the machinery for coffee here in Uganda. So most of our coffee is exported and processed. Then there is something that is interesting. What is interesting is that Brazil, being the world's largest coffee growing and exporting country, is facing a lot of climate challenge. And it is estimated that in the coming years, Brazil might be exceeded. It might fall a bit among coffee exporting countries in the world, and also still in growing. Some countries might come up. And also, when you listen from people who understand the coffee market, Uganda is expected in the near future to come up from this position 10 in coffee farming countries. It might come up a bit, and then among coffee exporting countries, it might take advantage of the climate change that is affecting most of these countries and come up, because we know that our climate here in Uganda, though we also get affected by the climate change, we don't get affected much like the rest of other countries. So that's something to note in this coffee industry. That is something that you cannot give a blind eye to. So what is happening? In 2018, there's what we call, is it the National Coffee Bill 2018. That bill was introduced, but then it was passed by Parliament in 2022. No, sorry, not 2022, 2020. In 2020, Parliament of Uganda passed a national coffee bill. And in that bill, there were a lot of things that brought fear to people. One of the things that brought fear to people is registration of coffee farmers. That registration was not just as lay as you hear it, because we had registration of the coffee farmers was like this: that get me as a farmer, you get my details. uh, don't stop there, get to where my garden is, the location of my garden, you register it, the size of the land where my garden is. You don't stop there, you register the number of coffee trees in the farm, in my garden. You don't stop there, you get back to where I bought the coffee seedlings. So even the coffee seedlings were to be registered with their particulars. It didn't stop on the coffee seedlings, even where I'm going to sell my coffee. Coffee buyers were to be registered. Of course, registration does not end in your name as a coffee buyer, your details and where you're operating. Yes, those were things that brought a lot of question marks, and there were issuing of certificates to coffee farmers. Now, these certificates, most people, the general public, viewed it in a way as issuing a farming license or a coffee farming license, of which you can't wish away their views, which can be true or which is true. Because by the time you're registering me and issuing me a certificate, and of course how the certificate is to be issued is still having a lot of question marks. Who will issue to you, who will give you the certificate, and using what procedure or protocol? So those are things that brought in a lot of question marks. That was the National Coffee Bill 2020, introduced 2018, passed in 2020 by Parliament. Parliament sent it to the executive, that sent it back to Parliament. And I think the two major issues the executive had with that bill, which was already an act, I think it was to do with UCDA, how the board of UCDA is it appointed or elected, something of that. And then number two was how the certificates were to be issued to these coffee farmers. That was 2020. Then when you have that, such a thing which is making the public ask a lot of questions, and even the coffee farmers, then you have something else. You have some deals, or someone may say memorandum of understandings or contracts that the government has been having with the private people, that has been making the public question or scratch their head so much. Because first of all, we have the UVCC, that company that is assumed to be owned by Pinetti, that Italian investor in Uganda. So we see that there was a deal, it was a multi-million deal or even a multi-billion deal between our government and UVCC, which is a private company. And the deal was actually, majority of people define this deal as government formalizing fraud, because there was a lot of irregularities in this deal that was signed. Maybe to highlight, number one, when it reached time for signing this deal, at the side of government, Matia Kasai just signed. Of course, there were witnesses like the permanent secretary, Gobi was a witness. Then on the side of UVCC, Pinetti signed as a witness on the side of UVCC. And the space or page where the principal signatory of UVCC should sign was left blank. And I think all of us assumed that Pinetti was the one supposed to sign where the principal signatory was supposed to sign, but surprisingly she signed as a witness, and both government uh, both government and parliament did not know who the principal signatory of this UVCC company was. But then you will be surprised that this UVCC was given free land by government in Kololo and Namamve, where they are expected to construct their industry. Then secondly, in this deal, we find that government is committing itself to supply this company with coffee, that all coffee from Uganda farmers shall be given or sold to this UVCC until this UVCC is having enough or even surplus supply to allow them have continuous running of their industry or company, that no one will be prioritized to do exportation of coffee or giving contract to any company before UVCC is having enough coffee to do its processing and export for its activities to continue. So that is fraud. First of all, that is a direct way of wanting to monopolize coffee industry, because as government you cannot commit yourself to a private company that it will have enough of Uganda's coffee from coffee farmers before anyone thinks of exporting coffee. They must sell to this company until they have enough. That is monopoly. That is suppressing or oppressing your own citizens to please a foreign private investor. That is UVCC. So you find that people are asking a lot of questions. People are like, now who is Pinetti? And like, how do you say the whole country will sell to them? No one will export before these ones have enough. As government, why are you doing that? And this contract was to run from 2022 to 2032. That is a period of 10 years with a total tax exemption. Like, this UVCC won't pay a single form of any tax that you know. So we are saying government is doing everything possible to prove to us that they want to monopolize coffee industry. That was with Pinetti. Then as Pinetti issue passes, then we see that there was also a national coffee bill that was passed by parliament, though it was brought back to parliament, and still also that was having things that showed that government is aiming at monopolizing coffee industry. And now we come to 2024. 2024, we are seeing a lot. Besides Pinetti, we are seeing that there is a Chinese construction company, that is CCCC. I think C 4 times. It's a Chinese construction company that was recently signed a memorandum of understanding with government, and that information was given by the vice president, Alupo, because I think the whole country didn't know anything about it until she made it public, and it was being given right to buy coffee from Uganda farmers and do and export it. I think majorly to China. But one would ask what else is in this contract that we don't know? Because we don't know. It's a concealed contract. Because if you're giving a construction company to do coffee export, and it is going to be buying coffee from Uganda's farmers, under what conditions? Like, are we not having farmers who are capable of doing export? Like, so you find that all these things that are not open to the public, where one person or a group of persons, private, are being given too much assurance by government at the expense of the citizens in the coffee industry. So you find that these are things that are making the public fear that whatever government is doing now is aiming at monopolizing the coffee industry. Then comes the Coffee Amendment Bill 2024. So the Coffee Amendment Bill 2024, as we say, number one thing is to dissolve UCDA and bring coffee industry direct under the Ministry of Agriculture. So one should know that coffee being under UCDA, that is an authority. Government doesn't have a direct political influence into coffee. That's why we were able to see that even private citizens are doing exportation of coffee. When you go to UCDA, of course, UCDA has its failures, but you see, one thing government is also trying to show us so much is that the failures of UCDA, it's saying, is more of administrative failures. So one would ask, if a school is failing, do you, if the administrators of a school is failing, do you close the school? Do you dissolve the school and collect the students and take them to another school or under Ministry of Education? No, you would opt to change the administrators themselves. If there is administrative failures, that these administrators are failing to make sure the seeds are distributed, or the market is researched, you change those administrators. You don't dissolve the whole ministry. But let's go to the main fear. The main fear is bringing coffee directly under Ministry of Agriculture. That is a direct political wing of government. So there's going to be direct political influence into the coffee industry. Whether you're NRM and you want to believe that, or you don't want to be, there will be direct political influence. We are hearing them asking that if you can trust the government that created UCDA, why don't you trust the government that is running the ministry? You see, what you don't get is, before UCDA, there was Uganda Coffee Marketing Board. Coffee wasn't under a ministry directly. Coffee was under Uganda Coffee Marketing Board, that this government closed or privatized and then replaced it with UCDA. So UCDA wasn't something new. Is not something new. So government did not create UCDA. Government actually renamed an authority, or did something doing the same work that what they closed was doing. Anyway, let's go direct to the point. When you want to understand how dangerous it is for coffee to be under ministry, which is having a direct political influence, you will appreciate the the vanilla industry in Uganda. Because let me give you statistics of vanilla, then you'll understand where our fears are. That besides all these other things we have listed that shows government is trying to monopolize coffee industry, the irregular contracts that government is making with private coffee farming industries, then the previous bills that we saw, the National Coffee Bill 2020 that Parliament passed, then now we are in 2024, the Coffee Amendment Bill. There are other fears. Other fears are, let me take you to vanilla. Vanilla and coffee in the world market, their demands do not go as low as other products. That you should not be lied to. The demand of vanilla and coffee in the world market is actually high. But what is happening? Let me take you to vanilla, because when you talk to most people who have been in this country long enough, they'll tell you we had vanilla, but vanilla was destroyed. Vanilla was destroyed. Yes, vanilla was destroyed because right now, for you to point out people who are doing vanilla farming in this country is very hard. In your neighborhood, maybe if you know someone doing vanilla farming, which is very, very difficult. It's not like back then. And what is happening? One thing you should know is you should not be lied to that the demand for vanilla in the world market has dropped. Therefore, people are discouraged from growing vanilla. It is not true. Because let me tell you some statistics about vanilla. When you look at the top 10 vanilla farming countries in the world, Uganda is part. Because we have Madagascar being number 1. But then we have Uganda being number 10. Like vanilla farming countries, top 10 vanilla farming countries in the world. Uganda is number 10. That the world statistics show that Uganda is doing a lot of vanilla farming. But when you come down into the country, down on ground, you won't find the people doing the farming. Then you ask yourself, who is doing this farming on behalf of Ugandans? Because when you look at the competition in the world market, that Uganda still makes it among the top 10 vanilla farming countries in the world, producing approximately 187 tons of vanilla, with growing industry and favorable climate, because our climate here favors the growing of vanilla. That you can't doubt it. But we have Madagascar, which is growing over 3 million tons, more than half of the global production. So Madagascar is number 1, then we have Indonesia. But when you come to number 9, Uganda is part. Because the top 10 vanilla farming countries in the world, Uganda is number 9. And we are competing so well in the world market. But when you come down, you won't find vanilla farmers, even in your neighborhood. You can't find. You cannot find. But then when you come to top 10 vanilla exporting countries, you find that Uganda makes it. Uganda is always either the second largest vanilla exporting country, or it can be pushed to number 3 or number 4, depending on the year. That is how much Uganda is exporting vanilla. But when you come down on ground, it is very hard for you to find a farmer who is growing vanilla. What I'm saying is not out of the blue. In your neighborhood, in your village, if you're asked to point out vanilla farmers, it's not easy the way you can easily point out coffee farmers. It's not easy anymore. But one would ask, who is doing this vanilla farming on behalf of Uganda, that is even doing it in a very competitive way in the world market, because there's money in vanilla. Because there are things that I don't know whether other people see things the way others are seeing it. I don't know, because vanilla is directly under Ministry of Agriculture. It's directly under a political wing. Ministry of Agriculture that majority of Ugandans see it as a failed industry because it has failed a lot. It has failed a lot of cash crops. Uh, Let me take us back. Let me not lose track. I said when you look at the top 10 vanilla farming countries in the world, Uganda is number 9. Is among top 10. When you come to vanilla exporting countries in the world, Uganda makes it either the second largest exporter or it can be pushed to number 3 or 4. And then you have, of course, Madagascar being number 1 as a grower and exporter. You have France, you have Germany, you have Uganda, you have Canada, Netherlands, Indonesia, USA. But then these statistics, when you come to 2023, 2024, Uganda is not among top 10 world exporting countries in vanilla. Uh, This is from 2023, 2024, and yet we see that up to 2022, Uganda was still ranked ninth globally when you come to top 10 vanilla farming countries in the world. Then one asks themselves what is happening because this country is doing so well in vanilla farming globally. Yes, we are doing so well. We should note that there was a drastic drop in price of vanilla in Uganda, not in the world. In Uganda, there was a drastic price drop in vanilla because at one point we even had vanilla price going as high as 500,000 Uganda shillings per kilogram here in Uganda. But then vanilla price dropped so rapidly that right now even vanilla in the market, I think it's between 3,000, 9,000, or it can reach 10,000. But normally it's 3,000 Uganda shillings depending on where you are. So you can look at that this drastic drop from over 500,000 to 3,000. It is not logical. It is not logical because if such a thing happens, I don't know. If it is under a serious government, I think the Ministry of Agriculture and a lot of other people would be in trouble to explain what is happening in this country. So that is how the price of vanilla dropped, and it even worsened during the time of COVID. Because pre-COVID it was better, than time of COVID it really went down. Of course, we saw this year 2024 around January, the state minister for agriculture, that is Fred Bueno Chakulaga. I don't know whether I've pronounced his name well, but he said this drastic this drastic price drop in price of vanilla is part of a 10-year cycle of agricultural commodity prices. That's what he said. And then, of course, other reasons were that farmers are doing premature harvesting, that there was global market fluctuation, there was lack of processing facilities in the country. But this cannot logically make one understand this drastic price drop that is within the country. So, in simple terms, or in other words, there's a high vanilla demand in the global market, and Uganda is among the top 10 vanilla farming countries in the world, and Uganda is among the top 10 vanilla exporting countries in the world. But within the country, locally on ground, the farmers are not known. You cannot point out them. You can't know them. The way people are coming out, you can see even Nandalama Fabi is a coffee farmer. This is a coffee farmer, coffee farmer. For vanilla, they are not known. The question is who is growing vanilla on behalf of Uganda and even exporting it? ah, so that is a fear that majority of people are having when it comes to coffee issue. That look, you took vanilla and put it under Ministry of Agriculture. In the world market, the price is there, the demand is there, but within the country, it is not possible for you to do vanilla farming because people from Masaka can bear with me that when you do vanilla farming, there are specific places where you have to sell your vanilla. There are specific people who buy it that if you don't sell to them, you won't sell anywhere because you're not going to export. By that, they determine the price for you. And then these buyers are not there every day. That there are days they are not there. There are days they are there. So you do your vanilla farming, but then a buyer dictates for you the price because you're unable to export. Not that you wouldn't manage exportation, but the system doesn't allow you to do the exportation. That is vanilla. So if you understand that, then you can see clearly where coffee is going. That once coffee comes under the ministry, there's going to be direct political influence. Coffee is going to take the same direction that you may not have the chance to export anymore because there are going to be private companies where you have to sell your coffee to, and these private companies will reach a point and dictate prices. Dictating prices, if the price gets too low, farmers are going to be discouraged from doing coffee farming, and most people will abandon it the way most people abandoned vanilla. When most people abandon it, there are going to be groups of people who will double up or even triple up their activity of coffee farming to meet the gap that the rest of the farmers will have left. Because farmers will not accept to keep selling coffee at very low prices that are dictated by someone. Because you won't be able to export. Of course, you might be myopic and fail to look at it that way. But when you look at vanilla, then you can transfer the knowledge. Because vanilla is really a good product in the world market that its demand is also high. But by the time it has been controlled from within the country here, it means the same trend can take place with coffee once there's direct influence into coffee. Because you see, right now you'll find that the board and all the top management of coffee of UCDA, there might not be a direct political influence on them. But when it is under Ministry of Agriculture, there will be direct political influence on them. And the rest will be history. Maybe there's something that I have not said, and that something was said by the president. He said, the president, General Museveni, he said that UCD has taken over the role of URA by collecting the 2% chase, which one may laugh because you see previously UCDA was collecting 1% chase, and chase is actually legal, and it is allowed by several laws, both within East Africa and within this great land. And chase is actually a form of tax, one would say, but it is institution based. So when UCDA collects chase from people doing coffee export, this chase is not touched by UCDA. UCDA hands it over to URA. Then URA deposits that money into the consolidated fund. The consolidated fund is the national basket whereby every tax that is collected from me, you, and whoever, the rest of the countrymen and women, is deposited. That's the national basket where every person, that's we call it the national treasury or the consolidated fund. The consolidated fund is where money is picked from and then put in budget. So that is where most people go wrong. They begin saying these political parties are funded by Museveni. No, these political parties are being funded by money from the consolidated fund, money from the national treasury, money that is the public money, money from the national granary, where you and everyone's money is put after collecting tax. Now the only thing is that this government is given the right to plan for this country on that national on that consolidated fund, that national basket. Yes, but that money doesn't belong to this government, because when this government goes off, that national basket remains. The next government is still going to use money from there. So that 2% chase is actually deposited by URA into the consolidated fund. Then from the consolidated fund, UCDA only gets it from the budget. And then also you see that this chase, part of it, well, of course, after collecting, and it is in the consolidated fund, the budget, you see that part of that money goes to these national laboratories that are doing research on coffee and all that. So that argument of Gen.Museveni is vague, and is just it would just show signs of desperation, because that is now throwing allegations on, they are baseless. Actually, it's baseless. So that is something about the National Coffee Amendment Bill. So the farmers need to be worried. Maybe what I've not talked about is the factory being built in Tungamo. I think it's even almost complete. Where we are seeing videos moving around, and they are saying that not very far from now, all your coffee will have to pass from here. So there's going to be a lot of monopoly in the coffee industry, and it is unfortunate. It is so unfortunate. Of course, government uh, is in its plan to rationalize, to reduce costs, but when you're doing that, there are so many agencies doing the same work with other agencies, with their mother ministries. There are so many. But when it comes to the issue of coffee, it's different, because it is very visible and evident that there's a special interest in the coffee industry, and it has not started today. It has been around, and it has been manifesting slowly, bit by bit, one thing after the other. People fight, and then first keep quiet, like it has been visible. So that's the issue about coffee. So to the layman who is doing coffee farming, I don't think there's anything good that you should expect from the Ministry of Agriculture. Of course, they are saying they are capable, but they have proved the country time and again that they are incapable. They are incapable. So the best you can learn from is the version of vanilla, compare it with the version of coffee. Maybe people who don't know, look at cotton. Cotton was so much grown in northern Uganda, but reached a point whereby when you grow your cotton, you can't export it. You have to sell to specific people who dictate the prices during the time of harvest. And you find that the prices are too low, that it discourages farmers from doing the cotton farming. It will come to coffee. Coffee, they will dictate prices, people will be discouraged and leave the coffee farming. When people begin leaving, there are going to be specific people who will do the coffee farming and compete in the world market so efficiently that we shall still be represented in the world market the same way vanilla is still representing us in the world market, even when we don't know people who are growing it. Another thing is, let me talk about a critical issue, that is the milk industry. The milk industry, when you look at it, this is an industry that touches, I think, the first family direct. Because when you look at milk in Africa, Uganda is the second largest exporter of milk, followed by Kenya. Because South Africa is the first, then comes Uganda and Kenya. But then Kenya comes third, because you find that about 80 or over 80% of Uganda's milk is exported to Kenya. Kenya is our major market. So Kenya buys it and then does a lot of processing and exports it, or even sometimes exports it like that. So you find that Uganda in Africa, being the second largest milk exporter, that statistics is not reflected on the local man down. It is not, because when you go to those places where milk is got from, you'll find that the farm gate price can go to as low as 300 shillings a liter. You see, we had an express, and a colleague was trying to tell us the experience from that side of Mbarara. That is Gideon. I think he's currently the president of Uganda on X. He was trying to say the frustration that is happening there. That there are days where the price of milk can go to as low as 300 shillings, Uganda shillings, a liter. That there's a way the people have been programmed that the days when it rains, or the period it rains, the prices of milk drops, and then the days it doesn't rain, the prices of milk is a bit high. High where the highest is 800 shillings a liter. So one would ask, with this a lot of this high demand of milk, even within Uganda, a lot of people consume milk, and yet the price of milk is that low, 300 shillings a liter. That's the farm gate price. So this farmer is going to have nothing that is changed in his livelihood, because 300 shillings, 300 Uganda shillings right now, there's nothing it can do. Maybe it can buy you sweet peps, it can buy you chewing gum. Uh, can it really buy a jerrycan of water? I think these 5 liters or 10-liter jerrycans of water, it can buy you that. I'm looking at what 300 Uganda shillings can buy. I think it can buy you paracetamol of 100 shillings, so you can afford for 300 shillings. What else can 300 shillings, Uganda shillings, buy? It can't even buy you toothpaste, it can't even buy you toothbrush. I think it can buy you a matchbox. I think our matchbox is 200 Uganda shillings currently. Some places 100 Uganda shillings currently. So that's the farm gate price. That there's nothing the farmer is. There's no way this farmer's livelihood can change with that farm gate price. So, and yet you find that the milk industry is so monopolized that for you to point out milk exporters in Uganda, it will normally rotate you back to the first family, because even the industries that are doing milk processing that changes it to powder. So there's a lot in the milk industry. It is highly monopolized. So the prices can be highly controlled. And it is very difficult to talk about the milk industry in Uganda, because the top beneficiaries are really untouchable people, and you don't want to really have a push down with them. So that's the milk industry, highly monopolized. So monopoly is really very dangerous, because you're going to remove the majority of these statistics that we read of Ugandans, because we said about 5 million Ugandans earn something from coffee industry. We saw about 30% of farming households in Uganda growing coffee. Like, the statistics really stand out. This you want to isolate them from the coffee industry, which is really going to be something that you should also remember that a lot of people have been educated on coffee. Personally, I'm not one, but there are so many. And most of the people around you, you'll find that they are in the families are in the coffee industries, because most of the friends we have at home, they are doing coffee farming. Even though our sides we are doing other different form of farming, you find that coffee has educated a lot, has changed a lot of households. So with these statistics, you see that coffee can be the only single cash crop that can remove families from poverty without government intervention, by the way, because government has not actually been intervening much. Without government intervention, the coffee alone can remove families from poverty. So the issues of coffee, really, if this government really cares about its people, it is very wise for it to leave UCDA and actually empower UCDA. because coffee is a cash crop you don't want to mix with others. It needs to be in its own specialized authority because it when dealt with it well, it can bring the money. And then there are questions one really asks that. You see, there's a lot of money making businesses in this country. There's a lot of export that this country does, but we still have a lot of debts. One may ask, where is this money going? Because we find that our budget still every year we need to borrow. Those are questions we really ask, that if we are really making much money, where is our money going? Because that money, we still have all these debts. It doesn't really reflect. And then recently we are seeing the president is saying URA has to step up their game in collecting tax. They need more. But then you need the tax, but at what expense to the citizen? Because they don't really look at the where they get the tax. All they want is to have the tax. When you look at how our mothers are harassed by KCCA for this tax, sometimes you say maybe even the taxes just need to be abolished, because they don't really care about the methods they use to get this tax, or at what cost it is to the citizens. One will argue, yeah, you want the good roads, you want the medicine in the hospital, so pay the taxes. People are paying taxes, but you see, they are not seeing what these taxes are doing. They don't see it, because when you start looking, you'll find that the hospitals, the health centers being upgraded. All the the money is from donations, from grants. You'll go to these regional referrals and you see the nice buildings from the people of Japan. From like, so what is our money doing? Because you really don't see it. Then you see the critical projects in the country are funded by US aid. Like, what is our money doing? Uh, you go to the roads, these construction companies are from China. You have a lot of people who have done civil engineering in the country. You don't see them on these roads. You find Chinese, you see now, okay, ours who have done these engineering courses because they graduate almost every year. Where are they being employed? Oh, our money can't pay them because you're paying these Chinese. Like, there's a lot of questions about our taxes. We don't see what they really do. So people also get discouraged from paying taxes, but still people pay taxes, and the tax collect has harassed our people. So there's a lot. Government is trying its best to save money. One may wonder, save it for what? Because we won't see where it is going. Maybe it will be going to elections and paying for influencers, paying for people to do good PR for the government. Like, there are so many ways this government can save the money it wants to save. We have a very large parliament, which is very useless. You see, one of my point of argument is this, that if you want to dissolve an authority or an institution because the administrators are failing, the National Assembly, our parliament, needs to be dissolved, because actually they have not done anything for Ugandans. I think they have been a rubber stamp for the executive. Maybe you can applaud them for that, but on the side of Ugandans, there's nothing. Nothing, because what comes out of there is complaint of corruption. People, people stealing billions in this country. But this is the same country where you find that there are so many who are living on hope and maybe chikomando. Chikomando is a mixture of chapati and beans for 1,000 Uganda shillings. That's less than $1. You sleep with it.